All right, folks. No time like the present. Let's do this. Sorry, I'm actually having a little bit of stage fright right now. Um, there's so much going on in the astrology. So it is Monday, January 5th, and I'm just getting to this video. It's been holiday season, lots going on with me, with life, with the world. Holy shit, what the hell? We're in a war with Venezuela now? I mean, what the fuck? Anyways, so this is not video is not made for children because I just said the F word. Let's get to the astrology. Enough dancing around. So on January 2nd, we had Sun sextile North Node, followed by Chiron going direct, and then Venus sextile the North Node. So the Sun is our awareness, helping our evolution, our karmic evolution. Sun is in Capricorn, North Node is in Pisces. So our leadership abilities, our uh, collective responsibility, our awareness around our responsibility and leadership is helping our karmic evolution. And women stepping into their leadership and responsibility, managerial personalities, are helping our karmic evolution. That was January 2nd. January 6th, Sun conjunct Venus in Capricorn, 16 degrees. So, again, our awareness, this is tomorrow, our awareness around the feminine. What does it mean to be a woman in charge? What does it mean to look over the welfare of others? Then, January 7th, we have Venus conjunct Mars, 18 degrees of Capricorn. So, the feminine and the masculine coming together in their leadership qualities. How do we manage people? How do we step into our power? How do we step into our responsibility? And then on January 9th, Sun conjunct Mars. So then our awareness shifts to what is male responsibility? What does male leadership look like? So over the course of 3 days, we get that little purview. I'm trying to do a little more focused approach this time. I've done like all the transits for the month, which, if you look at anybody else's videos, it's better to focus. So I'm attempting that this time. So then January 9th as well, later in the morning, Venus opposite Jupiter. There's going to be a series of Venus, Sun, Mars, Mercury. They're all traveling together through Capricorn right now, and they're all hitting different placements or other planets kind of in succession. So January 9th, Venus opposite Jupiter. Then January 10th, Sun opposite Jupiter. And later that day, Mars opposite Jupiter, followed by Mercury opposite Jupiter on the 14th. So, and during this, Jupiter's retrograde in Cancer. Venus, Sun, Mars, Mercury all in Capricorn. And they're all hitting Jupiter around 20 degrees. Mercury's at 19, but because Jupiter's going retrograde, it goes backwards for a bit, and Mercury hits it back at 19. But the other three are hitting it at 20. And, you know, Venus opposite Jupiter. So this succession of female collective awareness crosses several thresholds, starting with the polarization to our socially abundant selves. And then Sun opposite Jupiter, our awareness focused on accomplishing the task is polarizing our internal, emotional, social selves and sensitivities. And then January 10th, Mars opposite Jupiter, our masculine nature that just wants to produce is performing a tug of war with our internal emotional selves and sensitivities. And last, Mercury opposite Jupiter. Here's where Mercury joins into the mix, a step behind the others, but going through the same process. Now our minds are considering what it means to be mutually exclusive, to having fun with friends. So then back on January 11th, so before Mercury jumps into the mix, we have Venus, Sun, Mars, all squaring Chiron. So January 11th to the 13th, Venus square Chiron, Sun square Chiron, and Mars square Chiron. Blah, blah, blah. So the same succession comes into conflict with the masculine wound. It's another opportunity for all of us collectively to heal our masculine wounds, to look at the wounds of the warrior and the healing that needs to take place there. I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? If you look at what's happening in society, we just jumped into a war with Venezuela. What is that about? Oil. Huh. Interesting times, as they say. All three of these are hitting Chiron at 22 degrees of Capricorn and Aries. So look at where that lands in your chart. Venus, Sun, and Mars are all hitting Chiron, square to Chiron at 22 degrees of Capricorn, and Chiron's at 22 degrees of Aries. Next, January 11th. I just said that. Sorry, there's also a T square going on. So what I just described, Venus, Sun, Mars, all opposite Jupiter, and then they're all square Chiron. That sets up a T square, right? So Chiron is both squaring Sun, Mars, and Venus, Sun, Mars, and Mercury, and it's squaring Jupiter. So it sets up kind of our internal awareness, our personal awareness around our feminine, masculine, and personal selves is opposite the social dynamic that's retrograde Jupiter in Cancer, while the wounded healer, the wounded masculine warrior healer, is squaring both of those. And we can see this in the world right now. But it's interesting to see where these land in your chart, right? 20 to 22 degrees, Capricorn, Cancer, and Aries. And then Mercury jumps into the mix, squaring Chiron and jumping into that T square on January 15th. So it's a little behind. So our minds are catching up. We're going feminine, personal self, the I am, the sun, Mars, the masculine, and then last, our minds are catching up. And it's our collective minds, right? Like, how do we manage this conflict with the wounded healer of the masculine warrior, and then also balance our social selves, our social abundance. We have a quick yod. This is interesting. I'm kind of jumping into the fray here on this one. There's a yod is 1 point with two inconjuncts and then sextile each other. So it's like a long skinny triangle. And this yod shows up in a chart for San Luis Obispo where I am. Well, I'm in Santa Margarita, but close enough. Um, and the yod points to the horizon, the rising sign of the chart. So then you have um, sorry, this is actually an arrowhead. I'm I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, wait, that's not a yod. This is an arrowhead. So the rising sign, 28 degrees Virgo, opposite Saturn and Neptune. And then the rising sign is trine Uranus on one end and Sun and Venus on the other. So basically, Uranus and the Sun and Venus are pointing at the rising sign in Virgo and saying we need to focus on our health and managing our resources. The details matter. Conserving our energy. And opposite it is Saturn, which is trying to put form to our spiritual selves. This Saturn Neptune dynamic, they've been dancing with each other for quite a while now. I did it in my last video on 2026, and they're actually making a full conjunction on February 20th, Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees of the chart. 0 degrees Aries. It's like the 0 point of all astrology. But before it gets there, they're going to be opposing the rising sign in San Luis Obispo. So there could be some kind of monumental shifts happening here locally. Then on January 14th, Venus sextile Saturn. And that's just when it's exact. And then Venus trine Uranus. So those are aspects of that arrowhead shape. And basically, Venus sextile Saturn, while the feminine is focused on leadership and management, our karma gains form and structure. And Venus trine Uranus, at the same time, the feminine capacity for leadership is working with the erratic electrical upgrade to the planet's grid. Then there's a minor grand trine. And I kind of throw this in the middle, but it's starting around the 13th and going until the 24th. And it's Uranus in Taurus, trine Venus, the Sun, and Mars, all in Capricorn, and sextiling the Saturn Neptune conjunction. So this is basically like the tail end of that arrowhead that I was just describing. And it's looking at what's happening on the right hand side minus the rising sign. So even if you take out the arrowhead concept or configuration if you take out the rising sign for San Luis Obispo. And the rising sign is like the horizon, right? So these energies are focused on the horizon, what's rising into our consciousness, what's becoming known. You have this minor grand trine that's focusing on that and creating our awareness around it. So Uranus trine Venus and the Sun and Mars and sextiling Saturn and Neptune. So all this erratic change that's happening on the planet that's kind of electrical and chaos driven is supporting our awareness around taking leadership and responsibility for our lives, and at the same time working with this karmic spiritual form and structure that's been taking place for quite a while. I can't help to reflect on what's happening in the world, and it's a really karmic choice point right now. Then on January 17th, Venus sextiles Neptune exact. That's part of the minor grand trine I just looked at. And the Sun sextiles Saturn exact. Then what's happening is a cradle formation. So this is going to take place from the 17th through the 21st. So within the minor grand trine is another element. It's Lilith. So Lilith jumps in the mix at 3 degrees of Sagittarius. She's sextile Mars, Mercury, and the Sun, all in Capricorn, as well as Venus, sorry. Mars, Mercury, Sun, and Venus. Venus has switched to 0 degrees Aquarius by this point. Pluto's in there at 3 degrees of Aquarius. Sextile Saturn and Neptune together, and sextile Uranus. So what this sets up is almost like a half circle. You have Lilith opposite Uranus, and then Mars, Mercury, Sun, and Venus all together here. Sorry, with Pluto as well. 5 planets here, and then Saturn and Neptune here. So these 5 planets and these 2 planets are helping kind of negotiate this opposition between Lilith and Uranus. So Venus is working with Neptune. Sorry, skip that. Uranus is working with Venus, Sun, Mars. Mercury and Pluto. Sorry, I'm trying a new format here and it's confusing me a little bit. Anyways, so the dark repressed feminine, the liberated, empowered feminine is having a hard time with this erratic change that's happening on the planet, this kind of electrical shifts and changes that are happening. And because she just wants to focus on growth and expansion and liberation. And at the same time, our personal planets, Mars, Mercury, Sun, and Venus, and Pluto, this leadership quality that we're being asked to step into, and the just massive transformation that's happening on the planet in society is trying to work with this polarizing dynamic between Lilith and Uranus. And at the same time, Saturn and Neptune at the last degrees of Pisces are trying to help out as well. January 19th, Sun sextiles Neptune. That's exact. Then at the last degree of Capricorn. So it's our last opportunity to clean up. Sun 29 degrees, 50 minutes of Capricorn, Neptune 29 degrees, 50 minutes of Pisces. So it's our last opportunity to take charge and clean up our karma collectively, right? But where does it hit in your chart is the question. When you want to think about what is the personal aspect of this, how does it affect me? Look at 29 degrees of Capricorn and Pisces in your chart. So January 19th is a huge day, and that's why I included it. There's like 8 things happening on January 19th. Sun sextile Neptune, then Sun moves into Aquarius. So then we're focused on society, all of our roles in society. How does society function? Right after that, Venus conjuncts Pluto, 3 degrees of Aquarius. So the feminine is looking at, this dark, deep power transformation that's happening on our planet right now. And then Saturn sextiles Uranus. That's a big one. Saturn in Pisces at 27 degrees. Uranus in Taurus at 27 degrees. Followed by Venus sextiling Lilith. The feminine works with her repression and empowerment. Following that, also January 19th, Mars trine Uranus. Mars is at 27 degrees of Capricorn. Uranus is at 27 degrees of Taurus still. And then you get a mini grand trine or a minor grand trine. So Mars trine Uranus and both sextile to Saturn. So this is a moment where our masculine leadership is working with the electrical changes and the structure that's trying to be put into place with regard to our karma. And then the last transit is an exact Mars sextile Saturn. Right after that, Mercury jumps in the mix January 20th and sextiles Neptune, last degree of Capricorn. So again, our mind is focused on how can we deal with spiritual karma. And sorry, I'm just making one real quick correction here. So Mercury sextile Neptune, last degree of Capricorn, last degree of Pisces, then Mars sextile Neptune. So it's that Saturn Neptune dynamic, how they're coming together. They're only 2 degrees apart right now, but they're coming together on February 20th. And it's the exact times when Mars is going to be sextiling them. So the masculine is trying to work out how we're putting form and structure to our mystical spiritual selves and setting up the rules, boundaries, how society's going to deal with it. January 18th, Pluto sextile Lilith. 3 degrees of Aquarius for Pluto, 3 degrees of Sagittarius for Lilith. Again, this is like the deep, dark transformation around power structure and society is working with this expanded, liberated feminine who is done being repressed and just wants to expand and grow and travel and shoot out like an arrow. January 22nd, then Mercury conjuncts Pluto, and that sets up Mercury and Pluto together, sextiling Lilith. So our minds jump into the mix on the 22nd. And then Sun conjuncts Pluto. So Mercury's crossing over Pluto, Sun's crossing over Pluto, and Mars is crossing over Pluto. Let me look here real quick. Yeah, Venus did first back on January 19th. But now on the 22nd, Mercury conjuncts Pluto. Then the 23rd, the Sun conjuncts Pluto. And then Mars follows up on the 27th, conjuncting Pluto. So this little package of Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all crossing over Pluto. That's sextiling Lilith. So we get the feminine looking at the deep, dark transformations of society. Then we get our minds collectively thinking about that. Then we get um, our egos and our awareness. How does it affect us personally? And then last is the masculine. Mars conjunct Pluto is a big one. Mars is always going to intensify. I talked about this in the 2026 video that I just did the other day. Mars conjunct Pluto is a big one on January 27th. It's like it just intensifies the Pluto energy. It imbues it with more power, more energy. And Pluto's in the first degrees, 3 degrees of Aquarius, trying to unearth the darkness around society so that we can transform, grow, and fix these problems of the repressed feminine and the darkness of the masculine. It's powerful times. Thank you for listening. We shall see you in late January to talk about February. I'm going to be getting these videos out earlier. This was just a cluster off with the holidays and everything. Just so much going on right now. And forgive me for being a few days late. But yeah, we'll get this going. All right. Take care, you all. Care Bear hugs. Check me out at astrocosmology.com. Phoenix Rising Massage Therapy. And I'll see you on the other side. Ciao.